everyone. My name is Rita, and I'm a proud member of the Zer Nation. The Zer Nation is a global movement committed to scaling Africans' excellence to the global stage. And it's an absolute honor to welcome you to this special masterclass as we unveil a transformative book, The Afro-Optimism Unleashed, by our very own Adeolu Adewumi-Zer. Adeolu is a renowned African activist and a global strategist. And she has championed African excellence most of her life with dual honors from the Pennsylvania State University in the US. Her career of over 25 years spans 4 continents and 2 multinational corporations, including a leading major financial institution here in Nigeria. And in a world where narratives about Africa often lead towards its challenges, this book shifts the lens. The Afro-Optimism Unleashed book is a powerful call to us all who believe in Africans' potential to build practical insights and collaborate for global impact. The book is structured in 3 major parts. The first being taking us on a journey on becoming an Afro-optimist. This is where we get the mind shift towards seeing Africa's strengths and possibilities. The second part speaks to building African excellence, which is what we are all about here in Zer Nation. And the book draws from over 25 years of Adeolu's experience, who is the author, and shares practical strategies for us to deliver success on the continent. Then the final part of this book speaks to collaborating for global impact, because scaling Africans' excellence requires partnership, network, and a collective vision. So this masterclass session this afternoon is going to be a discussion for us, an opportunity to engage, to learn, and chart new paths towards Africans' future. Whether you're a leader, entrepreneur, or a change maker, this book and the insights will challenge and inspire you. Now, we know that writing is not a small feat. It requires vision, persistence, and a deep sense of purpose. And who better to take us behind the scenes than the author herself? So it is my absolute pleasure this afternoon to introduce Adeolu Adewumi-Zer, the brilliant mind behind Afro-Optimism Unleashed. Adeolu is not just an author. She's a thought leader, a builder of African excellence, and someone who has walked the path of leadership and transformation for over 25 years. Adeolu, we would love to hear from you. What inspired you to write this book? Were there any defining moments in the writing of this book? We would just love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, for that intro. I guess if anyone needs a hype woman, you can call on Rita. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first pilot of Afro-Optimism Unleashed. We plan to have many others, perhaps to stay on this topic, or perhaps to take up other topics. So what inspired me to write this book? Well, I want to say that it started with a lot of no's. So throughout my 25 years, there's been a number of folks who have suggested you should write a book for various reasons. When I moved to Turkey from Germany, I had a lot of German Turks who thought, oh, it'd be very interesting for you to write a book about your experience as a foreigner in Turkey. When I finally landed back on the continent, again, there were many people who saw my blogs on LinkedIn and saw my posts and thought I could build it into a book. But every single time, for various reasons, or actually for one main reason, I just said no. I didn't see any reason for me to do that. I thought that there are a great number of books out there speaking on really excellent, interesting topics. I read a number of these books, and I didn't really feel that I had something to add to this conversation. And until I felt like that there was a so what, then I didn't see any reason for me to pick up a pen. So, but last year, unexpectedly, I would have to say, this no became a yes. And this would be in May of last year, so just 10 months ago, when I was listening to or watching the launch of a person I admire who's based in the UK. He was launching a particular business, a particular tool to help business owners to write a business book. And so he was going through his spiel. I was listening. He was saying many very interesting things. But the entire time I was really skeptical. Even though he kept repeating the message, the book that will change your life is not the book that you read, but the book that you write. It made me curious, but it was only when near the end of his pitch, that he said one sentence. He said, "If you start today, you'll have a book out by Christmas." And for people who know me, they know how ambitious, how competitive I am. And when he made that statement, that was sort of all it took, I guess, or maybe it was just the straw that broke the camel's back after the conversation that many people had with me. They say that, okay, if I start today, it might not take so long. So, and I could start and always stop, right? So that's how it started. I went through the whole journey. So you have to do a lot of preparation before you start writing. And then you actually have to find time to write, which when you're running a business is not very easy. So I'm a morning person. So I would take the few days that I don't work out in the morning, I would take those couple hours in the morning before the kids woke up, before the family woke up, before I started work, to write a couple hours. And so then you think that, okay, after 4 months, I had the book done. You think that to yourself, like, oh, okay, I'm done. The real work has finished, and I can now hand it off to someone else. Little did I know that the real work had actually just started. So went through the publishing process, the editing process. That was a lot of work, even though my publishers assured me that actually it was very minimal editing from their part. I just thought that if this is minimal, I just pity the folks that actually have to do major editing. So that took hours going through all their edits. They did a really wonderful job. They caught things that I'm not even sure how they caught when you're going through over 200 pages of text. And you have to remember that in the first part, I said one thing, and then in the second part, I'm saying a slightly different thing. How do these two, so examples like that. So going through that process, finally coming out at the other end, and then having to do things like try to pick a cover for someone who maybe doesn't care so much about those things, and now being forced to say, is this the right color? What colors do you want? What do you want on your cover, et cetera, et cetera. But thankfully, I have a lot of people who are a bit more keen on that topic, so they were able to help and support me in that. And so just going step by step through the authoring process. What next? So having to review the edit multiple times, because remember, you would have written the book, you would have thought you're done with it, and then you have to read it multiple times to catch all the mistakes and to make sure that everything is clean for the final edit. My younger son asked me the other day, "Mommy, are you going to read your book?" And I thought to myself, I'm so sick of this book. I'm not sure I can read it one more time. But now that I actually have the book on my Kindle, I'm sure that after this week, I will be quite eager and finally have taken a long enough break to read it at least one more time, so that I know when others ask me questions who have read it much more recently than I have, I'll still remember what I wrote. So I'll just pause there, and I'll just close it one more. So why did I write this book? Why did I write this book? Right. So there's many different types of books I've written based on all the experience that I've had. But why did I write this particular book? Why Afro-Optimism Unleashed? And so again, it goes to my personal brand, where I call myself an Afro-Optimist. It's a term that I picked up, I don't know from where, but it's really become part of my identity. And I just thought that based on the interactions that I've been having over the last almost 10 years back on the continent, where I've met and interacting with so many great, intelligent, very curious folks who are perhaps only just missing one thing, and that's exposure. And so how could I, for folks who may never be able to travel outside their country or outside the continent, how could I help them to gain that exposure? And so that's part of what I'm trying to do in Afro-Optimism Unleashed. So I'll pause there, Rita.
Thank you very much, Adeolu. Thank you so much. No, you've gone on to share some of the many defining moments, because I'd asked for just one defining moment, but like you shared, it was plenty. Like you thought you was going to stop at just writing the book or being ambitious enough to write the book. That was not just the only defining moment. They kept on coming by as the book progressed, from deciding to say, oh, this is the I'm going to write a book, compared to when you have to write it, then you edit, then picking the cover, picking the various defining moments in the book. And you also told us on why you're writing this book, basically bringing exposure to people on the continent in a very easy manner, people who might be limited and not have the opportunity to travel, but are equally as smart, equally as intelligent, equally as talented as their counterparts anywhere in the world. So Afro-Optimism Unleashed is basically bringing the exposure and the exposure you've been able to gather over the years to people here in Africa in a simple and very affordable manner, just to buy the book for 99 cents. Thank you very much for that explanation. I also have a couple of questions there. I may be a little bit of an Oliver Twist, but if you would pardon me, may I go ahead to ask? May I?
Please go. Of course.
All right. Okay. So I'm not going to be selfish. I won't be the only one asking questions. I would also indulge members in the chat room to please drop your chats. You could use the Q&A button, or you could just put them in the chat comment section. I would do well to share your questions as well to Adeolu. But my first question, Adeolu, would be to say, what do you think is the biggest mindset shift needed for someone to truly embrace Afro-optimism? So you've said that it's your personal branding over the years, and what do you think you would recommend to a person on the continent, perhaps, who might not identify as an Afro-optimist, but you think they might need to come to a moment to say, oh, this mindset shift, identifying as an Afro-optimist would really do me a lot of favor. What do you think the biggest mindset shift to say, let me stop being a neutral person, let me identify as an Afro-optimist? What mindset shift is needed to identify as one?
And I like the fact that, thank you, Rita. I like the fact that you use the word mindset, because that's really what Afro-optimism is. It's a change in mindset. It's intentionally deciding that you're not going to buy into this narrative that comes from certain parts of the world, that Africans and Africans are underdogs, that we are coming always hat in hand, looking for aid, looking for assistance, not able to take care of ourselves. And additionally, always needing a sort of big brother, big sister who is much more capable than ourselves and knows much better than we do how we should live our lives. So this is a narrative that the world tries to push down on Africans, not just in Africa, but across the world, across the diaspora. And so Afro-optimism turns that around and says, no, I know who I am. I know what I can achieve. I know what talents I have to bring to the world stage as an African, as a Nigerian, as a Kenyan, as a Somalian, and the list goes on. So, but it's more than just a mindset shift. It's also putting action to those words. So if I know these things, if I'm confident in myself, if I understand what I can achieve and what value I can bring for the world and for the future and for our children, then what am I going to do to make sure that I'm ready? What skills am I going to make sure that I have? What opportunities am I going to ensure that I grab? when am I going to raise, and how often am I going to raise my hands so that I can get myself ready? And that's what Afro-Optimism is, because it's a belief in the future of Africa, but more importantly, it's a belief in ourselves as Africans.
Thank you very much, Adeolu. So you're basically saying the mind shift needed to become an Afro-optimist is to believe in ourselves as Africans and to believe in Africa as it is.
Exactly.
Thank
It
you.
doesn't
So,
mean it doesn't say. I know it says optimist, but it doesn't say, it's not blind optimism, right? So it doesn't say that, oh, I don't see the challenges that we have. I close my eyes when the lights go out. I don't feel the bumps in the road because of the bad infrastructure. I don't hear the cries because of poor health, etc. It doesn't say that we're ignoring the challenges that we have here on the continent. But it does say that I see those challenges. I know that we can overcome them. What can I do to help us overcome that?
interesting. Embracing the adversity and being empowered to tackle the challenges is what the mindset we are looking for is speaking to, and is what you yourself has embodied over the years. So, do we have any question from the house, please? Any question for Adeolu? It's about this session is just to engage here for us to learn, for us to be able to chart new paths towards African future, for us to understand what it is or how our mind works in terms of unleashing the Afro-optimism that African needs at a time like this. You could raise your hand or unmute your mic to ask your questions. I'm sure Adeolu will be happy to attend to them.
I did see a question drop. I don't know if someone can read it. You've seen it in the chat box?
There is a question, if I can come in.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to read a question from David. What are some of the major challenges you experienced writing the book?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge is just first of all finding the time, right? So I received an email last night from someone in the U.S. who had gone into consulting herself end of last year. So I was asking her, how was her first year, etc. And she was letting me know. And then she asked in return, she said, oh, I hope you've been able to do a bit of consulting while you've been writing your book. And I just had to laugh at that question because there was this assumption that I had somehow put the world on hold so that I could find time to write a book. And that's, of course, not at all what happened. I think people who are very successful authors can perhaps become full-time writers. But as a first-time author, and also not my intention, as a business owner, writing is on top. Writing is on top of running the business. Writing is on top of delivering to clients. Writing is on top of being a mom to 2 boys. Writing is on top of being a wife and everything else. And writing is on top of just living my life. So really, I would say that's the major stumbling block for many. There are many people who would love and have mentioned that they would love to write a book, and the stumbling block for them and for me, or the biggest hurdle for me, was finding that time. Rita, over to you.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So the time of being not just an author, but combining that with your business, with being a wife, with being a mother to 2 very active boys, it was the major challenge when it came to writing the book. And you've been able to embody it so well that people thought you had left your consulting business on the side, and you say, no, there's no special art for that. You had to do it all together. I guess the strength of a woman comes to play in there as well.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for sharing. We have another question from someone here who says, how can Afro-optimism be used to cultivate a sense of purpose and direction in life?
Yeah, that's a big one, because we as humans, we tend to need a purpose in life. One of the questions I like to ask people who ask me to mentor them is, what is your North Star? Meaning, what is your purpose? What are you trying to achieve? Can be different things for different people, but how is it that you're defining success? And it's only when I know that, then I know how this conversation, or I understand how this conversation should go. So I think that as Africans, what Afro-optimism does is to give us or shape the purpose that we can have. It doesn't mean that if you say that you're Afro-optimist, if you take that on as your brand, doesn't mean that you all of a sudden have to work for a nonprofit, or care about all the issues that we have as Africans, or be the one responsible for fixing them. But what it can say is, okay, the Africa we have today is most likely not the Africa that we want tomorrow. So what can I do? What can you do? What can every individual person do to make that change? And for one person, it could be being a good parent and making sure that their children have the skill set to succeed in the future, in a potentially future world. For another person, it can be becoming a musician or an artist and spreading the love and the culture and the traditions that have been built up over generations, so that we can share that with the world. For another person, it can be building a successful business or working for a successful business. So the answer will be different for each person, but it can be shaped by the idea that the Africa we have today is not the Africa we want for tomorrow.
Thank you very much. That is also one very key thing that has been missing in the narrative when it comes to Africa, the ideology, because I like the way you're able to marry the ideology to different facets of life, from being an artist, or being a good parent, or working in a multinational organization, wherever it is you find yourself in, wherever your purpose is being defined within. The ideology of being an Afro-optimist is what you would use to say you have lived a thriving life. So you don't need to say you're working in an NGO, you don't need to say you're working with a non-profit, or you're not making money, or wherever you find yourself, having the ideology of developing Africa in whatever you're doing is how you could become an Afro-optimist. Because the session this afternoon is geared towards optimizing the Afro-optimism within us here in Africa. So one way we can do that is by recognizing this ideology and holding on to it very tightly, regardless of the facet of life we are working in. Thank you, Adeolu.
Mm-hmm.
We have some key messages here on the screen. I don't know if you would like to speak to them, to just, talk to the audience and some of the thought process that you had while you are writing the book, so that we could learn from your insights.
Yeah, so in writing a book, so this is part of the planning process. And I like to say, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So I'm very big on preparation and on planning before starting something, particularly starting something big. And I think writing a book qualifies for something big. So I did spend a few weeks at the beginning just thinking through, okay, what messages am I trying to leave with my readers? And how can I take them through that journey so that it's not super dry and boring and ho-hum, but be able to share my experiences, to be able to to make it more real, what I was trying to explain. And so that's what I've tried to do. And of course, for those who have read it or are reading it, I'm still waiting for the feedback. But the book is basically organized in 3 parts. So in the first part, what I do is I introduce the idea of Afro-Optimism, how I became an Afro-Optimist, why I identify as such, and some ideas based on my life and my observations as to how one might be able to embrace this idea of Afro-Optimism. I'm one person, so I'm definitely not saying that my way is the way, but I am a big believer that we can learn from the experiences of others, and we don't always have to make all those experiences ourselves. Then the second portion of the book, which is really the meat of the book, is basically going through the 5 areas that I believe a business needs to look at to build a sustainable business in Africa. So it is a business book. It's not a memoir. It's not autobiography, although I try to intersperse a lot of my own personal experiences through the book, but it's actually a business book. So it's meant for founders, entrepreneurs, people who are trying to build a business on the continent. You don't need to be on the continent, but build a business on the continent. That's the focus of the messaging. And it's basically walking the reader through the 5 areas, the 5 steps that we also consult in with our clients, and we walk them through those same 5 steps. So putting this in a packaged, presentable way, so that you don't necessarily need to go to a consultant or to come to us to be able to implement some of these ideas in your business. And then the third piece, third part of the book is taking the ideas, the individual ideas from the second part of the book, the main part of the book, and stepping up into like a more high level. So now that you've gone through those 5 areas, now let's look at how you can sort of bring it all together in terms of partnerships, in terms of having a planning, terms of looking at ideas like shared value, etc., and sort of just wrapping it all together. And one of the tools that we've provided in the book is a way to measure yourself along those 5 areas, which is strategize, champion, accelerate, leverage, and expand. For the sake of time, I won't go into each of those 5 areas, but there's access to a tool within the pages of the book that, and you'll get a QR code at the end of this session so that you can access it directly without having to purchase a book, that will be able to help you to be able to access your business again along those 5 areas.
Thank you very much, Adeolu. So basically, it seems you're giving us a tool, a free tool to measure and optimize our Afro-optimism when it comes to the business that we run. Like
Exactly.
you said, it's not a memoir, it's not a biography, it's a business book. And this book has a tool that we can use to measure how we can be better at it on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much, Adeolu. We have a question here. Please indulge us. It's a masterclass. We want to learn from you. We want to hear you speak. So you've got to be a lot of speaking, and we'll be asking a lot of questions. Kindly indulge us for that. We have a question from Eunice. She says, looking ahead to a decade or two, what are the most exciting and transformative developments you anticipate seeing across the African continent that reinforce your optimistic outlook? So what are the transformative development that you anticipate happening on the continent that might reinforce your optimistic outlook? Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, the obvious answer is AI, right? So I'm a huge champion and proponent of generative AI. I think that there's a lot of benefits that can be reaped out of making our business, our life, our businesses, our working habits much more efficient. I think that the genesis of generative AI is similar to other transformative moments in history, the most recent being the mobile phone. And if we just think about how transformative the mobile phone has been for business in Africa, a business like Safaricom with M-Pesa wouldn't even exist without the advent of the mobile phone. And the same way that Africans and markets in Africa were able to leapfrog So many folks have never had a landline in their homes, and I guess maybe this generation might not even know what a landline is. But many of our parents, grandparents never had one in the village, but they all have mobile phones, or at least one, if not two or three, depending on which country you're in. So in that same way, I want to see, and I expect to see the use of AI, something that we can use to leapfrog as well. I don't know that I can say that I can see all of it, and how exactly it will pan out. But just to say that we need, I don't think we even have a choice in this matter as Africans, that if we don't get on this bandwagon and actually get ahead of the bandwagon, we will certainly be left behind. Eunice, I hope that answered your question. Okay. Thank you, Eunice.
Thank you, Adeolu. Thank you. And the conversation is not complete without the almighty AI. So it seems AI indeed is going to be the tool that might just put Africa in a better competitive place with our colleagues. So I have another question here that says, on overcoming barriers to African excellence, how would you, a minute, please, I'm trying to read out the question. The question says, in the part 2 of your book, you speak on overcoming barriers to African excellence. Many face structural and economic or even cultural barriers. From people, from your perspective, what are the most critical obstacles and how can we begin to break through them when it comes to structural, economic, or even cultural barriers that might prevent us from embracing our Afro-Optimism side to build the continent? What do you think are the critical obstacles and how can we begin to break through them to really be fully unleashed?
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to be one of the ones people will expect. I won't say power. I won't say roads. I won't say any of the healthcare. What I would say is leadership, because it all boils down to leadership. The lack of all those things is all because of poor leadership, bad leadership, whether it be bad leadership on the corporate side or whether it be bad leadership on the public side. So until and when we can fix the issue of leadership, which also boils down to education. So maybe I should have started with education. I think it's a flip side of the same coin. But education and leadership will fix everything else. And this is spoken as the daughter of a professor.
So you're encouraging us, first of all, to embrace education as being,
yes,
and then we can then tackle the problem of leadership, because every other thing in Africa centers around that. So we're still asking for more. Can you share a real life example of how an African collaboration, whether within the continent or globally, has led to remarkable success, so as to encourage us on the power of collaboration, as you discussed in the book? How has any African collaboration that you could think of within the continent or globally has led to a remarkable success for us in Africa?
Oh, that's a question. So definitely there are many. There have to be many, because I believe nothing moves forward in this world without collaboration. I'm trying to look for one that's not the usual suspects that are always named. And Pace I already mentioned. But I can just even use the example, maybe a smaller example of Zer Consult in Africa and the collaborations that we've built in different countries. So we have a collaboration, for example, with an executive recruiter based out of the UK, who happens to be half Nigerian. And so one of the areas that we focus on is around people and around talent. That's an issue that many companies face, not just on the continent, but it's actually a worldwide issue that I've encountered in many markets, is how do I find the right people? How do I build these people when I find them? How do I keep them in the company? And how can I build the right leadership team? So in collaboration with an executive recruiter, we're working with companies across here, Nigeria specifically, for this particular partnership, in terms of helping them to find the right leadership. Because we do have talent, whether it's in the country itself or in the diaspora. And sometimes, many times, particularly less experienced founders, I won't talk about age, but less experienced founders might not have access to the same networks that we might have as there, or that particularly that an executive recruiter might have. So that's a partnership that's been working very well for us here in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. When it comes to managing talent, so it's not a Nigerian issue, it's a global issue. And
Yes.
partnership can help go a very long way in resolving that for all. Thank you so much for that contribution. So are there any other questions from the people in the audience? You could unmute your mic. I'm sure Adeolu likes to hear another voice aside mine. So do we have any other contributions, questions? Use the chat box. Okay, see.
Do we
Please
want
go
to
ahead.
do we want to maybe bring down the slides so that we can see people?
Okay.
So feel free to put on your camera while you're asking your question.
All right, C, please go ahead. I can see your name as C. You could unmute and feel free to ask a question. Feel free to use your camera as well.
So we can see that your hand is raised, but your mic is still on.
See, are you there? Or
Okay.
someone else?
I'm going to put you all out of the misery. If you don't know who this is an alien. I have put my question in the chat. In Afro-Optimism Unleashed, you emphasize the importance of African founders adopting a global mindset while remaining rooted in local realities. What do you see as the most overlooked yet critical factor that determines whether an African business successfully scales beyond its home market? And how can founders strategically integrate this into their growth model from day one? My name's Tommy Davis. Everybody calls me TD, and you asked me here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming to our planet for these few minutes, TD. And of course, you're going to ask me an exam question. Okay. So the most, I think the most relevant I'm sorry, I forgot the word you used, but the most important criteria that a founder it needs is discipline. So for me, it's not money, it's not network, it's not contacts, it's not product, although all of those things very, very important. But I think the first thing that I would want to see when I'm looking at a founder is discipline. And the reason I say this is because there's going to be, as you know, TD, there's a lot of issues and headaches and temptations that can occur as you're building a business, as you're receiving capital, particularly other people's money to build your business and to scale it into other markets. And if you don't have the discipline to execute on the strategies that you have in place, to put in the hours that you might need to put in, at least in the short term, to manage your financials in the way they should be managed, to put in the governance standards to your company that a global company would be expected to have. If you don't have that discipline right from the beginning, and instilled throughout the company as the company culture. At some point, I don't know when, but at some point, I predict that company will fail. But TD, we're also happy to hear from your experiences.
No, thank you. I thought that was an awesome response.
So I got an A on the exam.
Yeah.
Thank you, TD, for joining us. And for anyone who doesn't know TD, he's very well known. I won't make you blush, TD, with your very long background. But I'm talking about.
No, don't worry about it. We're here to talk about scale.
I'm talking about 25 years, and TD probably has at least twice that across the continent. So thank you, TD, for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, TD. Thank you, Adeolu, for that brilliant answer. So discipline goes a very long way beyond the money that might be required. And discipline is what sets the tone for the growth of the business and the success on a global stage, like you shared. So there's a drum roll. Information reaching me is our book, Afro-Optimism Unleashed, is currently a #1 bestseller on Amazon across various categories. So we are the bestseller in the United States when it comes to the category of business and finance, global development. And we'd just like to hear from you. What would you say has led to you being #1 bestseller on Amazon across various categories? Drum rolls.
Well, it's been the support and the collaboration and the network. It's been people. It's not me. It's not my success. It's not Adeolu who has become an Amazon bestseller, but it's really because of all the people that I've met in my 25 years who have come now to support and to bring us to this stage. So it's a really great feeling. It's very exciting. I'm not sure I thought that this would actually happen. Definitely not back in May last year when I decided to start on this journey. But it's a great way to, I can't even say end the journey because I'm not sure that we've ended, but at least to take a moment and pause on the journey to Afro-Optimism.
Thank you. Recognizing people is also very crucial. And it is what has brought us to be now #1 bestseller. The people. Thank you very much for that. And we'll be wrapping up.
Is this Rita, maybe? So I think C has been waiting for a question, Rita. Rita's still there.
I'd like to thank everyone for being called. Your presence means a lot to us. Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, so I C is back, raising their hand.
Emmy.
So C, okay. Please go ahead. If you can hear us. Yep.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Adeolu, and congrats on making #1 bestseller. Congrats, well deserved.
Thank you.
So my question, I have 2 questions. The first question is, if there was an insight from the book that an entrepreneur or anyone could run with today and start implementing, what would that be, in your opinion? I'm sure there are so many insights, but what would that one be that you can run with today? And the second question is, when will the hard copy, I have my e-copy anyway, but when will the hard copy be available in Lagos?
Okay. All right. I like how you just, okay, let's start with the important one. So I'll start with your second question first. So the paperbacks are available on Amazon, but you're specifically asking us to when they'll get on the African continent. So that's something we're still sorting out with the publisher. But we've been assured that via their global distribution deals that it will certainly be available in the various countries. So not just Lagos, not just Nigeria, but we're looking specifically at Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt as our 4 core markets, and making sure that we know where we can point folks to. But thank you, C, for that question. And for your first question in terms of the #1 insight, so again, professor's daughter, never stop learning. And the reason I say this is because, so throughout the book, what I would like you to pick up on, in addition to the learnings, of course, that I placed out in the book, is the fact that via my experiences, this is where this knowledge is coming from, because of the experiences that I've made, because of the people I've interacted with, because of the my willingness to just keep learning. And so in that spirit, we've actually ended the book with a 12-month reading plan. So to not say that the learning should stop here with Afro-Optimism Unleashed, but you should continue that learning. And here's 12 more books that will expand your knowledge. And that's only the first 12. So once you get through the first 12, happy for you to reach out back to us, and I would be happy to give you another 12 as your homework assignment.
Thank you.
Answer your question?
Yes, you did. Yeah, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, C. Thank you for asking that brilliant question. And Adeolu, thank you for your insightful response as usual. And C basically just asked the final question I had for you. Very similar, but I'm not quite there when it comes to your response. So if there was one thing that you would like the readers to take home with after reading the book, either as an entrepreneur, either as a change maker, a policy maker, if there's one thing that you would like them to internalize, what would it be? What's that one thing gonna be?
What's the one thing? The one thing would be the change starts with me.
Okay. The change
Yeah.
starts with
So, and if I can expand a little bit on that. So, what I have tend and don't like to hear is when people are grumbling, let's call it grumbling, let's call it what it is, grumbling about and complaining about the many issues that we have on the continent. It keeps the fingers get pointed back to politicians, and whether right or wrong, the fact is that we elected those politicians, and I'm not going to go into politics. So whatever change we want to happen, it has to start with us, and we can't rely on government. We shouldn't rely on government. We shouldn't rely on politicians to make that change. We should rely on ourselves and and look at what we can do to make a difference in our world.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adeolu. Thank you for that charge to say the change starts with me. Not you, not the government, but with me. So we are wrapping up this session very shortly. Very soon we will be this session will be over. But before then, we'd like to encourage everyone on the call to please take the Scale Scorecard. So Adeolu was speaking earlier, and she mentioned a tool that is in the book that could help us measure our Afro-Optimism current level when it comes to delivering on the excellence that we can in our workspace, in our businesses, either as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, as the case might be. So there is going to be a QR code displayed on the screen right now. I would like us to please scan the QR code and take the scorecard that would help us measure and assess how we can continue to contribute and build the African excellence in our own space. So this QR code is going to take us to a tool that Adeolu has graciously kept in the book. It's a free tool. It's a tool in the book, but because you've attended this master class session, we're going to be sharing this with you for you to be able to scan it, and it will help you assess where you are currently and how you can contribute and continue building the African excellence in your own personal space. So that is what is our free gifts to you today. We also have another package. So for joining this session as well, we would like you to please, share your thoughts on what has resonated most with you on your social media handles, your LinkedIn, your Instagram. Just share your one thought or your on what has resonated better with you from this session, and tag Adeolu Adewumi-Zer. You could also tag Zer Consulting, and we will be on the lookout for that, and we will give you a free gift. So there's a free gift attached to you talking about what has resonated most with you from today's masterclass on your social media handles. When you're speaking about it, kindly tag Adeolu Adewumi-Zer and Zer Consulting, and we will reach out to you with a free gift. So before we wrap up, would there be any last words from anybody, any last contributions, suggestions, questions, or anything that you might want Adeolu to be aware of when it comes to Afro-Optimism Unleashed? I'm throwing this back to the house so that we could, give ourselves one more chance to share our thoughts, our commentary, our observations as we chart a new path towards Africa's future, changing our mindset and embracing the challenges that we have on the continent and seeing how we could tackle them.
Okay. May I?
Oh, please, TD. I was going to ask you anyway. Please.
Right. Just a departing, I'd like you to sort of do a jara, so to speak, as we say in Nigeria, which is sort of a bonus. You emphasize discipline as a key factor in successfully transforming from vision to scalable execution. All right, which I agree with 1000%. Now, from your experience, what are the top 3 disciplines that African founders struggle with the most? And how can they actively cultivate these habits in their day-to-day startup journey?
TD with another exam question. 3 parts. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, TD, for that question. I am thinking through it. So the first thing, which probably won't surprise my team for me to mention, is timeliness. This is a discipline that can be difficult for us in the South. It's not just Africans, but us in the global South. But one that if we don't cultivate, at least from a professional standpoint, what we do in our personal lives is up to us. But if we don't cultivate it from a professional standpoint, will leave us wanting and will just make us look like the unprofessionals that people expect Africans to be. The second discipline will be around money. And again, this is not just tied to Africans, but since we're talking about Afro-Optimists, we'll talk about ourselves, not about other people. But so when you're building a business, any funds that first of all, I think that you should also always try as long as possible to bootstrap your business, which means that you self-fund your business. At some point, you might decide to take external money. This is not a time to party. So even when you take in external money into your business, treat it as your own. So that's the financial discipline. And then third one is around, how do I want to term, ethical discipline. So this is going to that quote unquote boring topic of corporate governance. But if we don't have that transparency and the ethical standard built in our company from day one, then again, it would make it very difficult to compete on the world stage, talk less of displaying African excellence. So I hope TD, with that response around timeliness, around financial discipline, around corporate governance, that I've passed your exam.
Excellent response. Thank you very much. I'm quite sure your audience enjoyed that. We very much appreciate you. Great, great work. Keep the flag flying. It's just beginning.
Thank you, TD. I appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today. Rita?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the engagement, for the contribution from Steve to TD, to everyone on the call, to Eunice, everyone that asked questions. We see you, we encourage you, we love you. Thank you for engaging us and thank you for honoring our invitation. So don't forget, the QR code is being displayed. measure where you are at now, and see how best you can contribute to building the African excellence. As well, share what resonated most with you during this session on your social media handles, and tag Adeolu Adewumi-Zer and Zer Consulting, and we will reach out to you for a free gift. Thank you very much, everyone. Without further ado, the spirit of timeliness, which Adeolu famously is known for, I would bring this session to a close and wishing you all a very good day. Bye-bye.